Hey everyone, how are you all doing? Hope you've had a good day, morning, or evening. So did you hear that Ratchet is on PC, and you don't need an SSD like the Fanboys said you did? And now watching these exact same fanboys move the goalpost to try and find a W in this situation only makes it worse for themselves, and it gives us more salt to look at. Of course, it's Twitter salt, I don't like doing it, but it's still funny nonetheless. So maybe I should give you the lore on why this SSD is so important to the PlayStation fanboys. For the Xbox, it's their teraflops. For the PlayStation fanboys, it's their STD, or SSD, whatever you want to call it. But where this became a really big prevalent thing, where they started to bring it up more often, was during the marketing cycle for Ratchet and Clank. As a big selling point is that this game could only work because of the PlayStation SSD. And they have continued this narrative about this SSD being the sole reason why God of War Ragnarok, Ratchet, and Clank Rift Apart, Horizon, and many other games perform so well on the PlayStation platform. But, as I'm sure we all know, if you took 2 seconds to look at the recent PC port of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, you would start to realize that this SSD that they said was necessary for the games to run is not so necessary. But I'm now going to show you where this all started with this SSD being the sole reason for everything on PlayStation.
Worlds that feel real and are bringing you in. You're exploring these brand new spaces. And this is something that we never could have done on previous generations. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game that utilizes dimensions and dimensional rifts, and that would not have been possible without the solid-state drive of the PlayStation 5. The SSD is screamingly fast. It allows us to build worlds and project players.
Keep this in mind that he was only comparing it to older generations, not the competition, and saying that it was not better than any other SSD. He just commented that it was incredibly fast, not comparing it to the Xbox or any other platform's SSDs. But I'm sure you know that the PlayStation fanboys took that way out of context. Now, that is everything. You've got the lore, you got the background, and you understand why they want this narrative to work so hard in their favor. But I'm going to quickly recommend another content creator's video. Oh no, it's Alex. He shows off how the PC port performs compared to PS5. So, if you want to go watch that video and see the differences between both platforms, I would recommend watching it. The video is pretty fucking good. And on top of that, he also proves that an SSD is not necessary. Now we can finally look at the salt. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart on PC is basically unplayable without an SSD. It's so unplayable without an SSD, I believe firmly that the Digital Foundry video showed an extreme example. If you were to never update your PC, you could still run the game on a HDD, and it's that simple. It still was playable with a decent amount of issues with frame rate here and there, but it was still playable enough to get through the entire game. It was by far not the worst, and that just comes down to good project optimization on the developer's end. Good job, Insomniac, doing the Lord's work, optimizing games, you know. A lot of Western developers could really learn a lot from that. But it does get better. Because not only did people come together to take the piss out of IGN for their absolutely garbage article, they also, and I know this ain't much, they got fact-checked. So everyone, repeatedly, if you go find the tweet and look through the replies, you'll see that everyone is taking the piss out of them. It was pretty funny. Both PlayStation and Xbox fanboy alike seem to come to an agreement that not many people really like IGN, but not all things are bad at IGN, there are some pretty good individuals there. PS5 vs. high-end PC RTX 4090 and Samsung 990 SSD. The PS5 still loads through the level the fastest. Not implying it's better than such a powerful PC, but it clearly showcases the PS5 SSD wasn't all just hype. Thumbs up. Honestly, that was a bit of a fucking mouthful to read. I'm not sure if English is his first language, but we're gonna clearly disprove that the PS5 SSD is comparable to a PC. Because this game was only developed for PlayStation, project optimization was only probably done for PlayStation during its development, meaning all assets and resources are well optimized for the game. On top of that, we're not including any bottlenecks for any systems or any limitations on the systems to break the game. For example, on PC, SSDs seem to have a limitation to make the game run around the same speed as a PlayStation for this game. Credit goes to Alex's video for talking about this situation. But I'm sure in the coming weeks and months there will be patches to address that where it will be able to utilize the full SSD to its full potential, allowing it to be much better than a PS5. But I'm sure the developers or the community in the coming weeks to months will offer either community patches or official patches to uncap the SSD and offer bug fixing and balance patches for the game, or straight up project optimization. Hashtag Ratchet & Clank on PS5 in performance mode with ray tracing beats an RTX 4090 maxed with ray tracing quality mode, and leaves Digital Foundry scratching their heads that Mark Cerny's SSD punched above its weight, outclassing a $2,000 GPU and a high-specs PC. 2 years of waiting, and this is what PC gets. I swear, I think this microphone's on its way out. It keeps changing quality every time. One time I can sound very far away, and the other time I don't. Like, what the fuck's going on? But my problems aside, JTech, you are one of the biggest dumbasses I've ever seen. Do you think a PlayStation would be anywhere comparable to an RTX 4090? I think you know full well that if you were to compare both of them and run the same game at max settings, for example Star Citizen, the PlayStation would fall over and die. But I have to give credit to both Xbox and PlayStation. Whether or not they have both their bad and good, they are both a good price for performance, which if you were using them to start gaming, it would be a very good choice. But if you have the chance, I would recommend picking PC over everything. But to say that you think Ratchet & Clank performs worse on PC, and that's only because of an SSD issue, and I guarantee it would load much faster, and you're only going to notice a second difference between this one and the SSD that won't utilize its full potential. And to say that PlayStation is better than PC, I would honestly say is a lie, for both Xbox and PlayStation can't run their games higher than 1080p most of the time. Especially when it comes to project optimization, both Xbox and PlayStation have fallen short of their mainline games not performing to a standard that is, you know, next generation. For example, Final Fantasy 16 and Forspoken run less than 720 at some points, but at most of the time around 900p. And this is what you would call your so-called best performing games, like Final Fantasy and Forspoken, some of the most biggest hard-hitting games that you wanted to land, but as we all know, Forspoken sucked ass. And don't get me wrong, Xbox has this exact same problem. Halo Infinite performed incredibly terrible. But it seems like Ratchet & Clank on PlayStation launched pretty well. At least from what I found, there were no performance issues that were noticeable or really game-breaking. So that's a plus in PlayStation's book. But if any of you had any problems, let me know. We have people out here using multi-$1,000 PCs with HDDs to try and debunk Insomniac, only for it to fall short in Portal Travel. We can all admit that peculiar boy, Mark Cerny, is a beast. Is that it, Portal Travel? Because if that is the only problem, that means the game can still run efficiently, even though it's at a relatively low frame rate and isn't at the expected or minimum specs to play the game. It still runs relatively perfect and can still be played on lower systems if you don't meet the requirements. So it kinda comes off that PlayStation or Sony, Insomniac, whoever you wish to call out, kinda told a half-lie. Because through people demonstrating that it can be run on these lower systems, it may have well been able to be run on a PS4. Digital Foundry bought the fastest CPU, the fastest GPU, the fastest SSD, the fastest RAM, the fastest motherboard for their PC built, and still run slower than a PS5 Lamau. Hats off to Mark Cerny and the PS5 tech team. That's right, a PlayStation 5 can beat a top-of-the-line PC. It truly scares me that these people have the right to vote, that they have a right to share their opinion, that they value a piece of plastic more than anything else. Some days I wonder if we should send them to an island to fight each other to the death, and they can finally figure out who has the best console in ritual blood sport. I think that would be a lot more interesting to watch than them arguing on Twitter. Maybe if they got off Twitter, life wouldn't be so hard. But hey, there's not much we can do when there are more fanboys by the day, because they know it gives them that extra dopamine hit when they get clicks and people making fun of them. So that's it for this video, boys. Hopefully I can return to actual video content, as I can see there's a lot more interesting things. Maybe Harmon said something a bit silly recently that I can take the piss out of and make a 20-minute video with it, because I'm sick and tired of doing Twitter content, so you boys all go take care. Have a great day, boys.